Welcome to 10,000 Miles. Tonight's guest is Gordon Brown. Gordon is a guy I've admired for a super long time, an amazing musician, a prolific songwriter. This guy's written so many songs. They're all so great. He's a kind soul, super talented, and he has had a life of music since the day he picked up a guitar, and he's still at it, and he still does it for the love of music. He's worked with a lot of great artists. He's played on big stages. He's involved in so many great musical communities. I'm super excited for all of you to get to know Gordon as well as I do. So let's dive in. Hey folks, thanks for tuning into the show. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the Podcast Index, and Podcasting 2.0. We'd really appreciate if you download Fountain, find us there, and support us via value for value. We hope you enjoy the show. Happy listening. Hey, Gordon, man. How you doing? Welcome to the show tonight.
Hey, great to see you.
Man, it's been too long. I am super appreciative that you're on tonight and super excited and pumped for this conversation. So looking forward to it.
If you can get and pump a lot of information out of me, then at least I'll know what I'm doing.
I'm going to do my very, very best. Gordon, I've known you for a long time. I've followed your career for an even longer time than when we met. A lot of great things have happened. You continue to do great things in Amaze. And I have an unfair advantage. I know more about you than the audience does. And tonight we want to change that. So start off by introducing yourself. Tell people what you're doing now.
Cool. Well, my name is Gordon Brown. I've been in the band business for way too long. During this whole time of band business, which has been decades, I won't tell you how many, but you can guess. I've done many different types of things where I've curated and produced songwriter shows and music festivals and, developed artists and made records for people and, done everything that has to do with the music business. However, I cannot fix a flat tire.
We can help you there. I'm going to help you do that when you come back. It's easy. They sell the stuff in a can now. Just
good.
You put it on there. It's good stuff.
Even if somebody slits my tires, will it work then?
No, that's not going to work. I got guys for that though. We'll figure that out. Good. We'll certainly figure that out. Gordon, you've been bitten by the musical bug. You've been making new music for as long as I've known you, and I've got the pictures to prove it.
Yeah.
How'd you get bitten by the music bug?
So, I grew up in a town called Hazlet, New Jersey, very close to the shore. I grew up in a tremendous music community that was extremely supportive. And around the corner from me in Hazlet lived a guy by the name of Bruce Springsteen, literally like a half mile away. And I'd go into the city on the weekends, and my dad had an apartment right across the street from the Dakota. So we'd go to Central Park and we'd throw the ball, and John Lennon and Yoko would, be looking down at everybody. So I knew that this was real from a very young age. What I didn't know was how deeply enthused I would become for all of it when I was about 8 years old. And at that point, unfortunately, there was no turning back. First guitar, blah, 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 first songs. And then, here we are many years later. But it did.
What was your first guitar? What was your first guitar?
I have it
right
here.
You're looking like you still have it. Oh, man, I'm jealous. I'm so jealous. I don't have mine. You won't be
when you see it. Hold on. Don't get excited just yet. My very first guitar was a smashed Global. You can see that. It's a Global guitar that I took out in the backyard and did a Pete Townsend to it. But I held on to it somehow. It stayed with me through the years.
Hold that body up a second. Hold that body up a second. Dude, I might have had that guitar.
You probably did. It might have been
How many
yours.
how many pickups did that guitar have?
I don't remember, but
Did it have
probably
little slidey switches on it?
no.
Like a jet? No. All right, then I
No,
didn't
it
have
wasn't
it.
like a
Mine
K
was
or
a
one of those. Yeah.
yeah, mine was a no
No,
label
no.
too.
It was just your typical Sears,
Okay.
bought at Monmouth Mall, probably in Sam Goodies or something,
All right. No,
one
my
of those
guitar,
artifacts.
the action was so high on my first guitar, I should have become a
Yeah.
steel player, a lap steel
Yeah. Well,
player. It
it's
was
funny.
bad.
I did start in that way, doing like the one note things, like pumping out melodies, going, oh, this is really easy. I can hear it. And I didn't have to think about where the next notes were. That was a first inspiring moment for me, knowing, oh wow, the patterns make sense. I remember thinking, wow, the notes are coming very easy. I don't
Yeah.
have to sit here and search for the third or the fifth. Not that I knew what those were at the time, but I
Yeah.
could sense where the melody was on each string. That actually catapulted me into thinking I could do this. And
Nice.
to this day, I still kind of feel the same way. I get lucky every time I pick the damn thing up, and see what happens after.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you get your first guitar. How old are you? 8 or
Yeah.
9, you said?
Yeah, I think I was about 8 years old,
Okay.
and started with your lessons, doing all the stuff, the Mel Bay books.
Yeah.
One of the biggest moments of inspiration was at the Hazlitt Pool Club, where
Okay.
they would do community group guitar lessons.
Nice.
And I would go, I guess it was probably on a Sunday afternoon or something. And I'd walk in and it was a packed like classroom, probably of 20
Yeah.
people. And the very first day I walked in there, I'm like, who is that blonde, beautiful girl playing one chord and it sounds like the heavens from above? Gorgeous. I could see her from the back. I still remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Gorgeous blonde hair. Her arm was raised, like if she was sitting like this. And she
Yeah.
played one chord and it sounded like an orchestra and she was playing a 12 string. And as a matter of fact, because I always
Ah.
had one
Yeah,
close
you're
to
the
me,
12 string guy.
it was probably it was probably one of those. And I just said, wow, that sounds like every instrument in the world. And that started my fascination with the 12 string. And
Wow,
that
that's so
became
cool.
my main writing tool for years. And to this day, it's still like my go-to, on every
That's
session.
great.
Yeah, it's become, and when we go out and do radio tours, if I'm working with artists or out with whoever, the 12 string is such a great tool for me and foundational for vocals and singing
Yeah,
with
well,
people.
it takes a lot. It takes a good amount of space, which is
It does. It does.
not
If
too
used
much.
correctly,
Got more color.
you
Yeah.
that's right. You can manipulate it. Different tunings sound incredible on it. And,
Yeah.
when you capo and get those unbelievable voicings in different places, it can inspire in a writing room.
People talk about key color all the time, and I mean, I know from my writing experience, even a capo on a particular fret, even with the same, fingerings of chords and things, the musical brain just expands.
It
It
does.
just, changes everything. And I know
It
on a
does.
12 string, there's a multiplier of that for sure.
Oh man. So, the greatest thing is like you could just do the exact same thing, 3 frets down, 2 frets up, somewhere around,
Yep.
the 12th fret. You can make it sound like a mandolin. You could get really percussive with it with your right hand. You can kind of play drums with it at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can be a lot of things on that instrument, and it really
Yeah.
just helps it expand the way a song can kind of glue itself together or actually build as it goes.
Yeah. So when you started playing guitar, did you start writing first? Did you know you had an affinity for writing straight away, or how did you
Yeah,
get introduced to writing music?
it did kind of happen naturally. Like I said, I started to see that my hand would kind of know where the notes were. And that led me to expressing chord arrangements and being able to emulate melodies over those chord arrangements. And by the time I think I was, 11, 10 or 11, I started to get the sense of, wow, I can put some chords together and write a song. And I started to feel as though this would be kind of like my path for as long as I could make that work. And I always felt an affinity to be creative, to get things out of my system, which we all desperately need to do it.
Yeah.
But at that time, as a 11-year-old, I must have felt a tremendous sense of expression. And I know a lot of my friends, like most of my friends were into sports. I was into sports, but nobody was doing what I was doing. So it gave me a bit of individuality. It gave
Yeah.
me, separated me from the pack a little bit. And then it
Yeah.
started to become a piece of identity. People would know me for it. And then all of a sudden I was off and running going, oh, that's how these guys do this. It starts to maybe define them a little bit. And then they
Yeah.
define it by creating with the chords, with the instrument, with the music. And you're giving a piece of yourself. It's coming out of you and it's therapeutic. And then you can form groups of people around these little arrangements and start bands. Who would have thunk it,
Community.
And that really,
Well,
that was the diamond in the rough at that moment when I realized that stuff.
I'm gonna interject two things here, but I want to come back to a sense of community. But I want
Yeah.
to start off with, feeling unique or special or differentiating yourself. So through high school, I was in a little cover band in high school, garage band. And growing up in Jackson, New Jersey, right outside of the development I lived in was a place called the Jackson Cinema.
Mm,
And it was owned by a guy who was a little bit younger at the time, older than us, obviously, but I think he was in his 30s, and he was a music head. He loved music.
right.
And he would show movies all week long, but on Friday and Saturday night, he played the Rocky Horror Picture Show at midnight. And so then he had this great idea, is like, what if I had a live band play before the Rocky Horror Picture Show? So the band would do a 45-minute set at 11 o'clock p.m. on a Friday and Saturday night, and then, be done, wrap up, boom, midnight, Rocky Horror Picture Show would fire up. So we became the house band at the Jackson Cinema. And I used to tell people all the time, everybody from Jackson would come to the gig Friday and Saturday. I go to school on Monday. I was a legend, right? Because we had a good gig or whatever,
Right.
playing whatever, just having a great time. Yeah. Tuesday, people were still talking about the gig. Wednesday would die down. I was just, the average Joe. Thursday, what's coming up? Boom, Friday, I was a legend again. So it was cool. You definitely differentiated, man. It was a way to stand out.
When many of us musicians start young, you start to see that, oh wow, like not everybody knows how to do this, and you can build on that and kind of like realize like there's a little bit of notoriety at a young age. There's like some very special things that you can kind of fall into by studying and really, listen, this wasn't easy for me. I spent hours upon hours upon hours.
Oh yeah.
I would have a chart. By the time I was 13, I actually have, and probably still have them somewhere in my archives. I would have calendars every day. Before school, I'd have to do 2 hours of guitar playing. When I came home, if I didn't get to 6 hours, I wouldn't let myself pick up the phone. I mean, I was
That's great.
Organized, dedicated, and I had a target, and I tried to stick to it every single day. That kind of template lasted throughout my high school years.
That's amazing. Well, you're ahead of your time on that for sure, especially at a young age. But I told you I was going to come back to sense of community. I mean, there is something that happens in music, whether it being in a band or having a brethren with, brothers and sisters in music and communicating through music. I was talking to a friend of mine. He says, people want to be a part of something. Everybody wants to be a part of something. And you see these phenomenons, and whether it be currently pickleball or, CrossFit or any of these things around athletics or sports or whatever.
Yeah.
But music is no different in the community and music, in the right community. I mean, there was also a lot of competition and, but those were from the bad-spirited people. I think anybody who's really got a good spirit and was in music was always trying to lift everybody else up around them, which was super cool. When did you
I will.
discover that you liked making music with others?
Well, let me say this: in the wrong
Yeah.
community and in the right community, being in a gang, there's no feeling in the world like it. When you
Yeah.
step on stage with people that have your back and you're in sync and you are
Yeah.
playing material that you believe in and it's your thoughts in the world, whether it's your thoughts on the world or just each other, and you
Yeah.
stand on a stage and present that to everybody and don't give a shit what anyone has to say, that is a feeling unmatched. And that will
Yeah.
last from the time you're 8 years old to the time you're hopefully 180 years old. That
Oh,
feeling
yeah.
just doesn't happen in any other way. Sports teams have it, absolutely. It's a
Yeah.
different thing because it's competitive and you're trying to win and you're trying to be better than others. In music, it's not about competition, it's about expression as
Connection.
priority and connecting to an audience. Yes, which
Yeah.
you know, you know a lot of bands. I know a lot of bands. Doesn't always happen.
No.
As a matter of fact, most of the time it doesn't happen. But if that band believes, they stay around and they keep doing it until something happens that leads them down the path for their business or for their survival. But
Yeah.
if you have a group of people or you're just a solo artist or whatever, and you have a vision and you are expressing, then the road is in front of you and you are in the car driving all the time.
When'd you get in your first gang?
My first gang probably came around 12 or
Okay.
13. Yeah, all kids were older than me. And I was desperate to be in a band. Uh, that was to me where I thought I found a sense of family. And I found like-minded individuals that were a bit older, and I started to jam and play, and I would have people come and listen to my songs, and I found my first little grouping of guys that we started our first band with, and I think the very first band was called. It turned into Gallery, but I think the original name was called Reflection or New Reflection or something funny that you would have done in
Okay.
high school.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it consisted of Sean Zoke, Rob Tanico, who was my partner in Mr.
Rob was
Reality as
in that
well.
band. Holy cow.
Oh,
Wow.
Rob, I've known Rob Tanico since I was 12 years old.
I
And
love that guy.
that's where we developed our sense of harmony. And Rob was always my biggest fan and just made me believe that I could write songs and really do this. And
Great
Rob was
guy.
such a great musical partner. He really, for many, many years, was always right by my side. And then we would create the foundation for the projects that we were doing.
Yeah.
And when it became Mr. Reality many years later, Rob and I were the harmony to Peter Scher's lead vocals.
Yeah. So you jumped ahead there. You took us from Revelation or whatever you said the name of the band was
Right.
to Mr. Reality. I mean,
Yeah.
Mr. Reality was signed. You know, you
Yeah.
signed on a major label, and didn't you get to do that to work with Danny Korchmar?
We
If I get
sure
that right?
did. We sure did. So we went through our kid bands, and doing
Yeah.
all this stuff in the clubs at the Fast Lane and the Stone Pony and sneaking in to Asbury Park every chance we could. And we were also in a band called Faith Healer with Joe DeMeo, who owns
Yeah. I remember that.
Pure Fire, who's one of
Okay.
my favorite people on the planet. And that's where I met Peter Scherer. And at the time, music was changing. We felt differently. We didn't want to do the same old thing that was, seemingly a constant. And so we decided to take the 12 string and flesh out our songs and create harmony. And while guys in Seattle were getting very heavy with their guitars and angry, we
Yeah.
went the other way and we went back to, Crosby, Stills and Nash and
Yep.
Eagles and things that were very country infused as well.
Yeah.
And that was what Mr. Reality was about. We had three stools. We'd go out and play acoustic. We'd open for anybody. It didn't matter what the genre was. And then we got our first record deal. Yeah.
If I had to make a bet back then, you guys would have been huge. I thought that first record was unbelievable.
Thank you.
Thought Peter has a very unique style of singing.
Yeah.
And a different sense of timing.
Yeah.
when he sings. You know,
Yeah.
he's on top, he's behind the beat. You know, really, really unique. Obviously, 3-part harmonies were ridiculous. Rob, to this day, remains one of my favorite bass players I've ever had a chance to record.
Yeah.
Just he had a sense of melody in playing bass that all of my favorite bass players would have, but he was so musical, just really a great guy. And as he moved on into his digital art career, I bought like a lot of his stuff.
Did you really? Wow, that's
oh,
amazing.
dude, I had him up on the wall. I took a picture.
Yeah.
He was like almost in tears to see that like somebody believed in his art. It was early on, like when he just started doing it.
Yeah.
I think I bought like 15 pieces and I had them framed and made this beautiful collage up on the wall. And it was cool. It was cool because it was him for me.
On that point, Rob was always so talented. He was an incredible artist. He used to hand draw our flyers in gallery. Man. I'm pretty sure he did our logo, of course, you know, but he would hand draw us as cartoons in the flyers that we would go hang up, you know, cool. All throughout Monmouth County. And, you know, the guy was just, you know, full of talent and it coming out of every pore all the time, you know.
Oh yeah. And you know, some might take this the wrong way, but if you're in the music business, you know what I mean? What a sweet guy.
Yeah.
I mean, just a great soul. But that was a cool ride you guys had. And, you know, you guys did a radio tour and, you know, you got to do some shows. Who'd you play with during those days?
Oh, man, we toured with everybody, you know. So when Mr. Reality kind of was getting out of the gates, we had tremendous support from John Bon Jovi and that whole circle of guys. As a matter of fact, I do tell this story a lot, but David Bryan, one night, after rehearsal in Long Branch at Peter's house, Rob and I were driving back towards the Hazlitt area, and those guys were doing one of their very first Christmas shows. And I'm like, Rob, let's stop by. Let's go to the back door. I know John is starting a label. You know, maybe I'll see one of them or whatever. And sure enough, David came walking out first, and I ran up to him with a cassette.
Game of tape.
David, I'm a songwriter, and I got this band, and you know, we're really good. You know, 17 years old, right?
It's great.
Imagine.
Yeah.
And sure enough, you know, it was maybe close to 2 years later, Mr. Reality was playing their, you know, signing show at the Fast Lane, and there's people everywhere. And David comes and he comes and finds me, and he shakes me by the shoulders. You're the kid that had that damn cassette. Such a great moment. And
so great.
A moment of validation of, wow, someone cares and really took a listen and maybe was being nothing but supportive. And those guys all have been. We played our first arena show at Stabler Arena, opening for them on New Year's Eve in
oh wow, I didn't know that.
What was it, 90? I think 92 going into 93.
Okay.
We also, they asked us to open Toad's Place in, it's not New Hampshire, I think it's in Boston. It's a legendary rock club.
Okay.
And then the Fast Lane, we opened for them when they put out Keep the Faith. And so we were just like, we couldn't believe it. Here's guys from the neighborhood, you know.
Yeah.
And they're one of the biggest bands in the world. And they are passing the torch, and they want to see what Bruce did to them is now coming down as well from Skid Row and those guys. And that generation was coming down to us. I always say we're third generation Asbury Park as far as the public is concerned.
Yeah, sure thing.
We were very fortunate at the time, and you know, not to put the bow on the story, but close to 30 years later, Williams Honor got the tap to open at Madison Square Garden for them.
Oh, I saw that. That was freaking fantastic. We're going to come back to that. I don't want to fast forward too much because there's a lot in between.
But that's our music community, and that is what makes us so proud to come from the Asbury Park area and wear it on our sleeve wherever we go. You know, it's things like that are so important that most kids don't get the chance to have in their neighborhoods. You know, there's maybe 5 to 7 of them left in America that really have a a continuity to
Yep.
them, where people care and they know that there's a new kid coming and they want to see him go and they want to see the band rise and get out of there, and people, they do what they can, you know.
You know, the Asbury music scene is iconic, not only in New Jersey, but all over. People
Yeah.
know about Asbury Park. They know about the Stone Pony.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Well, my wife and I, our first date included going to the Stone Pony.
Yeah.
We did 3 things that night. Well, what they weren't, none of them were planned except the dinner, by the way.
Yeah.
I took her out to dinner in Tom's River at an Italian restaurant.
Right. Sure.
And it was early. We had a good time and we were connecting. I go, oh, there's a movie starting in 30 minutes down the road. You want to grab it, watch it? Yeah, we went to the movies. That was done. Things were still, I go, hey, Cats on a Smooth Surface is playing over at Stone Pony. You want to drive up to Asbury? Sure. So we drove up to Asbury and Cats was playing. And it was a hell of a first date. But so my wife loves to tell the story that our first date wound up at the Stone Pony. But when we tell that to people,
yeah,
no matter where we've lived in obviously in New Jersey, but Colorado, and now we're in Texas. People know.
Yeah.
They know. Like if they've followed music,
yep,
they know about Asbury, they know about Stone Pony, and they're almost like a little bit in awe that, you know, that's sort of kind of where we got to hang. And a lot of greatness came through the doors of the Stone Pony for sure.
Sure did. We so this year is the 50th anniversary of the club, and the first kind of night that they did like a big celebration and the launching of the 50th year anniversary, they had all these panels. They asked me to be on one. I was honored, and everybody was telling different stories. And Bob, do you know who Bob Santelli is, Vic?
I know the name, but I don't know him.
Unbelievable. Well, he is a professor at Monmouth College. He's been a writer of many, many tremendous rock and roll books. He's been close to the Springsteen camp forever. He wrote for the Times and he's an amazing.
That's how I know him.
Scholar, writer. I mean, helped create the Hall of Fame and the Seattle Experience, and I've known him for a long time. When the Pony closed down the first time, they did the Pony's Final Ride, I think they called it, and they had my band was called Sam Hill at the time, and the Outcry guys, we all played it at the very end, and I'm pretty sure that was the night that Bob Santelli took the stained glass out of the Pony and was taking it to the Hall of Fame. It was the beginning of the Hall of Fame, and I watched. There's right by the front of house console, there's like a sidewalk that I was sitting at while he was walking by me with the stained glass. And I remember he gazed down, he sees this kid looking up at him like, holy shit, you're going to take us to the world. I knew that was about to be a symbol for the world, for him to tell the story to everybody. And here we are decades later, and that is exactly what is happening.
Amazing.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yep.
So you take the Mr. Reality tour.
Yeah. Oh, so
right. You go down that. Let's walk us through the phases of Mr. Reality.
So our first label deal started around 92, and we launched the record. We go out, we play with everybody. We did a bunch of different tours. We were on the Horde tour, I think, the summer of 93, which was Blues Traveler and, you know, a lot of those bands that opened up at Red Rocks with like Spin Doctors, and like there was that crew of bands at the time that were kind of regenerating the jam band thing in a new way. And this is way before Blues Traveler had the big hit on the 4 album. This was probably like 2 or 3 years before that. So we're on this like fledgling, like everyone's hoping this thing's going to take off tour. And that kind of gave us our first like, oh, this is touring life. This is a tour bus. This is how it works. This is how bands, you know, deal with one another while they're on the road.
Yeah.
And it was a whole entire education that came real quick and real fast. And I had a great awakening during those days of how all this stuff really worked. It wasn't the dream we all think it is. At times it feels like it is, but there's a lot of reality that goes no pun intended, but it goes
Yeah.
into this in the way you need to have a great team to get your music out there, to market your albums and make sure that your songs make it to radio and that there's manipulation of the charts, and it's like a real business. And none of us really understood what that meant. We just thought, oh, you make music, you put a record out, and you blow
Yeah.
up,
And,
and you
and
become,
everybody does everything else. Yeah. It just all
yeah,
works.
man, sure, but it
No.
doesn't
And then,
work
of
like
course,
that.
there's political things and people jockeying. I mean, I was caught up in an experience at Atlantic. I co-produced a record that, for all intents and purposes, should have been a hit, and
Yeah,
was signed just by the wrong guy at the label who nobody liked. And when it
yeah.
started taking off, we had found out years later that somebody in a more senior position went in and said, squash it, because
Oh yeah,
they could not stand the thought of this A&R guy having a hit.
yeah,
And I'll leave the details out from there, but we
yeah,
were like, and we didn't realize that until years later. And it was a kick in the
yeah,
shorts.
yeah.
You put your heart and soul into the music and the recording, and you spend, gosh, I used to tell people all the time, I'd spend 20 hours a day recording, writing and recording, being in the
Yeah,
studio. I
yeah,
didn't have a clock. I didn't, if
right,
I was tired, or if I was beyond the point of diminishing returns, meaning
right,
I think it's great and it really sucks because I'm too tired to know better.
right.
You got some sleep and you start again the next day. But
Yeah,
there's a lot to learn when you get into this business of music.
yeah,
There's a lot to it.
yeah. There's a reason why it's not called the music, and
Yeah.
that second part of
No
the
kidding.
second part of the phrase is a real bitch.
Yeah.
And if you don't wrap your head around it and learn how to deal with it and take the good and the bad of it, then it's tough to see your way through it.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, it runs parallel to life in general,
Yeah,
because anything in life, there's good and bad. I
true.
was just at an end of year banquet for my nephew's golf team.
Yeah,
And the coach said to outgoing seniors, he said, "Hey, golf is hard, but I got news for you guys. Life is hard."
right.
And he said, "And I'm here to tell you, and I don't mean to disappoint you, it doesn't get easier,
Right.
but you just get better at
Yeah.
hard."
Well, that's
Yeah. He said, "You
yeah.
get better at hard. That's how you win."
The thing that you do is hard, but life is harder. Yeah,
Yeah.
the reason why life is harder is because you're focused and passion on the one thing that you are always holding on to, or crafting or practicing or whatever, the thing that is your true love. And then there's everything else, and that everything
Yeah.
else sometimes is like, wow, I didn't see that bill coming. I didn't see the death in my family coming. I didn't see, the foreclosing of a house or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
anything.
There's a lot
There's
to it.
things in life, I've lived in a bubble most of my life. I will honestly admit, I've done what I could do to survive through it all, keeping the passion as priority, and
Yep.
then hopefully everything else finds its place, or I do just what I can to keep the train on the tracks. And sometimes
Yeah.
that it's going real quick and it's real strong, and sometimes it slows down a little bit, and has to drive through some towns that it didn't like so much, but the train keeps going. And that
It
is
does.
really the trick. Keep the
So
car on the road, keep the train on the track.
Mr. Reality, the train led to Sam Hill, right?
Yeah, so we had three bands really,
Yeah.
three different names, the same three guys, and then we
Okay.
started to flesh it out, just like our favorite bands did. Our first album as the three guys happened to be acoustic. The second album, we changed the name of the band to Sam Hill. We broke up for a bit, got back together, just like our heroes. And
Yep.
as we got back together, we wanted to expand the palette, and we did, and it became a bit edgier, and brought us to the next phase. That band was called Sam Hill, and we just started doing it all over again, in bigger ways, in more big grandiose ways. So at that point, I thought, wow, if we can do this with a few more guys, we could really go back and forth, much like Eagles did, and Zeppelin, and all of, again, some of the greatest heroes of ours that we grew up
Yep.
on their records. And so we started to get a great sense of things. Music had really gone in a strange direction to us. You know, we liked what had happened in music, but we also felt how contrived it was, and that all of the in the mid 90s, late 90s, things started to just get very punk influenced, which guys that couldn't even spell Sex Pistols. It used to be
Yeah.
very it was interesting, to say the least. You know, credibility was such a big factor. Meanwhile, there were kids that have no idea of what it was that, they were being held credible for.
Yep.
That was frustrating for us at the time in rock music per se. So we just kept doing what we knew how to do. And we were building on our roots. We were telling the stories of our friends and families in our neighborhood, and hoping again that people would connect. And we eventually signed with Sony. And as we did that, we signed with Sony in New York. There was another band that had the name. And so instead of giving away 99 cents of every dollar, we changed the name of the band. And then we were in. So at this point, we went to Nashville to record. We had been taking trips. I was always very interested in country music, always, talking to the guys about, Restless Heart at the time, and Black Hawk, Diamond Rio, these big harmony bands,
Yep.
just stuff that we were very similar to. And so we would take trips to Nashville, and at this point we decided to make our Sony record there, and had a great time. And that's when we changed the name of the band to Highway 9, and finished up and came home, and we're going to put out our country record. And the label did not want us to do that. They were like, we're going to service it to rock radio. And I just thought that was the absolute last thing on earth I wanted to do. I wasn't going to go
Okay.
out and, try to get a spot next to Korn or Limp Bizkit or Slipknot. Not that I
Yeah.
didn't like those bands. We just didn't have anything in common with those acts. We
Yeah.
were in a different place. And so we left Sony and went to RCA Nashville. And we were somewhere around, year 14, the three guys. And once we got to Nashville, I had been there about a year, 6 months to a year before I was integrated into the writing community there, which I cherished. I was on a roster
Did you
with
move
guys.
there?
Yeah. We had moved there on and off through the years. We'd spend some time
Okay.
there and come back to Jersey. And at this point, I thought I might be moving there for good. And we lived in a couple places while we were making that record. I basically had everything that I owned with me. But we just could not keep it together. And again, as bands do, we felt it was time to just maybe take a little break and reassess where we were at. But we did cut a bunch of songs and try to make the most out of what we thought we could do. And it just didn't work. We were just out of gas at the time.
All right. That happens. You run out of gas, you just got to refill the
Sure
tank
do.
from time to time.
That's right. And then
So,
we came home, and at
okay.
that point, a lot of the things that were in Nashville, Asbury Park was just starting to find a new way. And so I started a songwriter show called Writers in the Raw, just like the in the round performances that you see all over town in Nashville. And we started it at a place called Harry's Roadhouse on Cookman Avenue. It was one of the first venues that came alive and brought Asbury Park back to a place
Nice.
where people would come. At that point, parents were not letting their kids to town. And so we do the show once a month. I'd call my friends, see who's available. And it kept growing and growing and growing. And over the course of a year, I did this, by the way, with my dear friend Barry Dorsey, who was the manager of the club. So we started the show together, and it just built and built. And all of a sudden, we found ourselves having Kevin Bacon one night, and Barry went up to Kevin and said, "Kevin, if we got this to TV, would you want to be a part of this?" And he said, "Well, why don't you call my lawyer and let's see what we can work out." And
Okay.
I won't go into the big long story, but at one point we had on the dock, live from New York City at the Hard Rock Cafe, it's Kevin Bacon's Writers in the Raw. And the first show was booked, and it was like we couldn't even believe it. I'm literally going on pitch meetings with Kevin Bacon in New York. Like it
Unbelievable.
was, yeah, it was a wild time. And since, I won't get into all the particulars, but the bottom line was the Hard Rock Cafe was not a union house. Kevin was a little worried that some of his other friends that just had these issues working non-union things became an issue. He didn't want to go through that. And
Got
so
it.
things fell apart, and, back to square one. But we kept the show going for a little while longer. I was getting back into the band business. I was making records for people and really becoming a hired gun. And then we started the Wave Gathering, and that was unreal. It was,
Tell me about that. What's the Wave Gathering?
Asbury Park's first real, community music festival that boasted the town's talent. And we would take all of the artists that wanted to be a part of it, put them in all of the businesses, acoustic, and then we would do all the big stages that wanted to have Wave Gathering there. And then by the second year, we started bringing people from outside of New Jersey. And then by the third year, it was international. By the fourth year, we were closing down Cookman Avenue and putting a stage. I mean, it was
Wow.
becoming too big for me and my three partners to really grasp and handle.
So this
And
is
by the
Asbury
fifth year,
South by Southwest, right?
that was the goal. That was the
Yeah.
goal. We were doing
Yeah.
music panels. We'd have everybody come down from the city, our industry friends. They'd come down and do these incredible panels. It really was turning into that thing. And by the fifth year, I just was having a difficult time, again, trying to tie the bow, see it through, and make it the thing that we wanted it to be from the beginning. You need funding
Yeah.
to do all this stuff. You need
You
a
sure
lot of
do.
money, and you need a lot of wasted money that, you don't get back. And sometimes you can't keep the gas in the tank, but it's fun while it goes. And we really pulled off quite a stunt for those years.
You said you did some hired gun stuff. I know about the Jesse James
Oh
Decker
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
about
Oh
that. How'd
yeah.
that come
That's
about?
great.
Yeah.
Well, so, you get calls every now and then. Hey, people might know that I'm producing or playing guitar for people and whatnot. So you'll get a call to go out on the road and do a one-off or go do a radio tour or, write a song with somebody or help them make their record or even just mix something. And there was a great period of time for me where I wasn't sure that the band business was really for me anymore. And so I would get calls and I'd go out and I would do, side gigs or help people develop their projects and really get a deeper sense of the other side of things by not being the artist and helping people learn from my experiences or my mistakes. And I find great pleasure in that. It's great in a way. It's somewhat of a teacher's role at times.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes you're in the trenches along with the artist and, trying to keep them, excited and invigorated about the task at hand. And sometimes you're there to say, hey, that's not a good idea. Maybe, that's not the direction you want to go in. But that's always been a great thrill for me as well. And that's when we started
That's a
all
higher
our,
form of that's a higher form of enlightenment, Gordon. So, I talk with lots of people all the time, and
yeah,
if you picture your life
yeah,
and you fast forward it to like maybe your last hour instead
yeah,
of all hour, your last
right,
hour, and you
yeah,
go through the proverbial fast forward in your mind about what you've done and what you've done, and what mark you're going to leave behind. Certainly
right,
one of the top three or top four is, how did I raise somebody else?
right,
Like, who
yeah,
did I help? Whose
yeah,
life did I enrich? Like, what did
yeah,
I do in my life to help somebody else go forward?
yeah,
And we had a team meeting for one of my companies a couple of weeks ago, and
yeah,
something was like, what's on your check the box list? Like, what's the last thing? And some people want to do this, that, me. I was like, I'm going to become a pilot, before my days are over,
yeah,
And one of my teammates said, I want to make sure that I have on my list somebody whose life I've materially changed for the better.
Yeah, that's great.
And he called me later and he said, I didn't want to say it in front of other folks. He said, but you've inspired me for that. He goes, because
That's
make no
awesome.
mistakes, I'm on your list, he said.
Yeah,
And I
that's
said,
so
man,
awesome.
that's unbelievable. I said, I'm going to shed a tear here. It was great. But, Gordon, you helping other people and being willing to share sort of the tire tracks on your back from
Yeah,
experience and hard work and a lot of great success and a lot of near misses and all of these
yeah,
things, that is a higher sense of enlightenment. And you have to have a big heart and a big soul to do that.
yeah. Well, it's a thrill for me. I really do. I love, again, not being the artist and being in service to the artist. And most of the time in my band scenarios, the singer to me is the artist, and I'm in service to the singer, no matter
Mm-hmm.
what. Even if I'm a co-writer or the songwriter or whatever it is, the singer to me is the most important. They're the ones out front. They're the ones putting the show on most of the time. And they've got to have a foundation. Mick Jagger could not be Mick Jagger if there wasn't a Keith Richards,
Yeah.
and all the way down the line, all of our favorites,
Yeah. Yeah.
they must have foundation so they can perform and be great and feel, their wings spread every time they walk on a stage. And that is a thrill to be a part of that. Whether it's, the band part or just the side guy part, it's a real thrill.
Who are some of the people you supported?
Oh man, geez. Well, so I was with Jesse Decker for close to 10 years.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Yeah, we toured everywhere, huge, small. I watched her whole thing go like that. It was quite a ride
She's
for
still
her.
doing it?
She's still doing it. She's a big family, a huge merchandise. She's got clothing stores all over the place.
Oh,
Really
wow.
beyond the kind of thing that most people really get to achieve. She really took it. She was one of the very first Instagram stars of country, like maybe the first
Yeah.
before they even
Wow.
had charts on for country acts with, whose followers were the biggest and all that stuff. She was on
Yeah,
top of that
sure.
stuff at the very beginning. There was a pop kid by the name of Jackson Harris who also was one of the first YouTubers, maybe a little more than 10 years ago. And I
Okay.
was part of that project with him. And we actually, as we were touring, one of the things we did in Anaheim was go to one of the very first YouTube conventions. And so he would tell
Oh,
me,
my
man,
gosh.
there's all these kids that are on YouTube. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm telling you, there's like kids walking through supermarkets just filming themselves. And they've got like 1 million followers. I'm like,
Yeah.
for walking through the soup, you must be kidding. He's like, so then I would watch him do it. This is like literally
Yeah.
year one. And he taught me a great deal. It was really something else to see as socials were really becoming what we know of them now. Um, and so that was a lot of fun. And we wrote and produced some stuff for him. He's still out there playing. There's a girl by the name of Natalie Stovall, who's now in a band called Runaway June, who, since the Dixie Chicks, they're the only female trio that's really charted, and they're killing
Okay.
it right now. She also hosts the Opry. I cut her first demos right here in this place,
Right.
and we had a
Right
great
there, right
time.
where you're sitting.
Well, in one of the other rooms, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably right here. She is just amazing and just one of the greatest talents you could ever imagine. And now she's like one of the faces of country music. It's just incredible to see this stuff
That's
happen. And
fantastic.
many people from this very area, there was a band called Status Green who just got back together and had a great show at the Pony a few weeks ago. Myself and Ron Haney had been working with them. Rick Barry, a girl by the name of Jersey Jung, this girl Lil Cloza, a lot of people from the area as well that we were helping them put their records together and getting them out and going,
That's
get out of
awesome.
here, go. Yeah.
So before this show,
Yeah.
I had on Mark Ribler, one of your friends,
Yeah.
and one of my longtime acquaintance / friends. I
Yeah.
grew up around the corner from Mark. He's a mensch. He's just
Did
such
you
a good
really?
dude. Oh,
Oh my
dude,
God,
he
that's
had a.
crazy.
Oh, dude, I grew up around the corner from him. He's a few years older than me, so he was one of the
Yeah.
guys I looked up to as a guitar player. But he also had a recording studio in his parents' basement, and that was the first
Yeah.
time I've ever recorded, ever.
Right.
Was
Oh
in
my
Mark's
God, I
studio.
wish I
Yeah,
knew that when we first met. That is
yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. First time I ever recorded was in Mark's studio. He had a Tascam 80-8 half-inch, 8-track and a Soundcraft console, and I
Yeah.
recorded like 4 songs in there with a bunch of my buddies from high school. But
Yeah.
he told me of a great night at McLuhan's Supper Club
Mhm.
when you and Reagan were first introduced. And I think
So,
that was the start of something really special. And I'd love to learn
so,
all about that.
so it wasn't McLuhan's. It was actually, well,
Ah,
I
okay.
might have run into her that night. However,
Okay.
and we tell people this all the time. Mark really did. He was the conduit to bring us together. We
Okay.
had Superstorm Sandy here,
Yeah.
demolished the Jersey Shore, and Mark
Yeah.
was putting one of the Restore the Shore benefit concerts together. He had called and said, "Hey, we're going to do this show. I'd love for you to be part of it." I said, "Great, I'll go to the country station. Why don't you have somebody that sings country, and I'll do a bunch of stuff with them, and just let me know who it is before we go. Whatever it is, I'm in.
Okay.
Count me in."
Okay.
So he said, "Have you met Reagan?" I said, "Well, I think like we might have run into each other, but not really." So he slated for her and I to do a few songs together at the Strand Theater during this Restore the Shore benefit. He said,
Okay.
"Come to rehearsal." I think I was actually out with Jesse, and I wasn't going to be able to make it back to town till the night before the show. So I just charted out the songs. I said, I'll meet her there. It'll be great. We'll have a great time. So sure enough, she busted the door down, coming in a sound check. We hit it off immediately. The show was spectacular. I mean, it was one of those nights. I still can't believe all the people I continue to see that say they were there that night. It was like there
Okay.
was a lot of magic in the air that night. And the very first song was the band's The Wait, right? Take a load off. Is it called The Wait? The Wait
Yeah.
from the band. Right.
Yeah, it's the wait. Yep.
Yes. So her and I are
Yep.
singing into the same mic, note one. That's kind of how our
Wow.
connection started. And Mark really was the conduit and made sure that would happen.
He
And then
tells the
her and
story,
I,
by the way. He tells the story, by the way. He goes, yeah, they clicked immediately. And then after the show, they're sitting at the table and you could see they're plotting their future together.
we did go to, they had like some funny little after party down the street from the venue, and we all went together, and like Jack Daly and Mark and Leon was there. I think like a whole bunch of crew that you would know. A
Uh-huh.
lot of the usual suspects from the area. And Riggs and I sat down at this table, and I got my, Jack and Coke or something. And she thought it was her iced tea, and she poured a ton of Splenda in the thing because it was the same color. She thought that was hers. And I went to drink it, and I was like, "What'd you do to my drink?" I thought she was trying to drug me.
She roofing
Sure
you.
enough, 10 years
Who
later,
wouldn't?
see,
Yeah.
I'm still under the influence, Vic. I'm still under the influence. She
Well,
got me
man,
good night one.
I had never known her from the area. I mean, she's such a
Yeah.
huge talent.
Incredible.
And so I got introduced to her talent through the work you guys were doing together.
Yeah.
And when you started releasing some demos and maybe the first record come out,
Yeah.
I don't think I ever told you this. I heard a couple of the tracks and I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is special. First of all, I'm listening because it's you. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been a big fan of yours for a real long time. I personally think you're one of the most talented guys I ever met. And as I tell all the time too, just a real, genuine, amazing person. So I've always admired your stickability, your talent, the smile on your face, no matter where you're seen. But I started listening to that first record, then I did something that I do to all my favorite records, and I still do this once a year to the Beatles' full catalog. So I listen to it in a great set of headphones. I do it to the
Yeah.
Beatles because you hear shit in a great set of headphones that you just, and not earbuds like I'm wearing now. I mean,
Yeah.
like the OG, like real
Yeah.
good immersive sound headphones.
Right.
And I said, this voice, man, this voice is just, it's unbelievable. And so I went, pulled out my Beyerdynamics, like super expensive headphones that I still break
Yeah.
out from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I put them in. And it was one of the times I was on Facebook. I took a long break from it and social media in general, but
Yeah.
I did send her. We had gotten introduced and followed each other because of you, and she's very
Yeah.
kind. Always acted like she was an old friend of mine, which is really, really neat. But she's just sweet. But I had sent her a note and said, I spent some time in the music business. I produced a bunch of records, and my
Yeah.
thing was always producing vocals for singers and for background singers. And I had the painstaking patience and an ability to capture artist performance singing.
Yeah.
And I said, I just wish that I had the opportunity to sit on the other side of the glass while you were singing. I just listened to this stuff in the headphones, and it would have been a thrill for me. It would have been a treat. I really enjoyed your style. I love the way you sing. The control she has over her voice it's impeccable.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
impeccable and it's moving.
She's
She's
something
real
else.
super special. She is
Yeah.
something
She
else.
really
So
is.
I'm coming to Jersey this summer from sometime in early June. I'll be there for like 3
Right.
weeks.
Oh,
Maybe
great.
if you're around, we can connect and just
Yeah.
hang out a
We'd
little bit.
love
But
that.
so you start this band called
Yeah.
Williams Honor with
Yeah.
Reagan. How did that come about? When did you start writing? How did the name come about? Like, I'm all ears right now.
So this is the room she recorded those vocals in, by the way, and
I
right
believe
behind
it.
you. I won't move to mess up the shot,
Okay.
but on this couch right here is where she recorded every one of those vocals on the record, and she
Wow.
did it like she was born to do it.
Effortless.
That's how
Yeah,
she
you could
is.
hear it.
Um,
You could hear it.
it's incredible. We wrote all those songs here, many in this room, and she just really got me back into the band business. I really thought I would just be making records for people and going on tour and doing all that stuff. And we met that night and hit it off and got together to write. And we wrote a few songs that were just kind of like beating around the bush, kind of what we could do together because we were just getting together as writers. By the way, I must tell you, her and I, she had a deal in Nashville with DreamWorks when Scott Borchetta
Okay.
had the label with Toby Keith prior
Oh,
to
okay.
Taylor Swift, before it became Big Machine. She had a deal there and was working with a guy by the name of Jimmy Harnon, and they were starting to put her through the motions in town. And, going through the motions in Nashville is very different than most places. And I was on RCA at the time, and her and she was also waitressing in a place called Sportsman's Grill, which is legendary, and they just knocked it down. We just visited the new venue that it is last week,
Okay.
and we walked over to the table that I went and had lunch at with my publisher while she served me. And that
Wait
was
a
one
minute.
of those
Did,
times. Yes, we didn't know each
did you
other.
know
We
her at the
both lived
time
in
or no?
Nashville. Not at all.
Well,
She
how did you remember she served you?
Because I remembered her. She had a weird,
Oh,
funny
wow.
streak in her hair, and so did I. And when we came together and she told me she worked at Sportsman's, I said, "Were you one of the waitresses?" She said, "Yes." I said, "I was in there with my publisher because that was like the place to go, do the shtick
Yeah.
when you're at a writing session. And the waitresses were beautiful, and that's what everybody knew that in town." And sure enough, she most likely
Wow.
served our lunch that day. And I pointed to the table and she said, "I think I remember that most likely was the case."
Wow.
And so,
That's so
this has happened a
sexy.
couple of times in our lives through the years. It also happened at Birch Hill. I won't get into that story. But
Okay.
um, her and I meet, we get together, we start writing songs here in New Jersey. And I've got a good grouping of things. There's three of which I felt like there's something different going on here than me just like, working with the singer. There's something very special. There's one song called Send It to Me that I thought had tremendous potential. And
I
so
still
I
do.
started, hey, listen, I'm not doing the band stuff, but I wanted you to, what do you think of this song? I'd send some things out. And I got nothing but positive reaction. Now, as you know, Vic,
Yeah.
that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
So I said, Riggs, I think we might be onto something here. Let's keep writing. Let's see if we get to 5 songs that are within this context, because we both love country music. We both wanted to have a real act from New Jersey that could boast being one of the only country acts to really ever come from New Jersey. And we've both been flying the flag for decades already. So who
Yeah.
better than us to do it? And so we kept writing, and that is what our first record is an experimental, let's see if we can pull this off and create a band. And sure enough, as we started to go out and play these songs for people, we thought it was as good as anything else we had done. And that's how Williams Honor started.
Just say you're all mine and send it to me.
Yeah.
And send it to
That's it, baby.
me. Hey, I see. I told you. I'm
That's it.
listening.
You're in.
Right?
You're in.
I'm
You're
in.
in.
Yeah, I'll find the other harmony, but it'll be okay. It's great. I mean, that I when I heard that, that's the record. When I think you might have. Did you have her like release with like a limited number of songs before it was a full
So that
album,
was,
or?
we did, we put a song called Mama Please out first. This was before
Oh my
country
God,
music
that song
started
was
to go back to tradition.
unbelievable.
So I said to her,
Yeah,
listen, I see where this is going. Guys are going to start coming out, and pedal steel is going to be important again. And all of the classics, all of the feel and the sound of the Whalens and the Johnny Cash, all those things are going to be integrated into modern. Let's be the guys to do it because we love it. And so Mama Please was our first attempt at showing Nashville that we appreciate everything that had come before.
yeah.
And so
I don't
that's
know
what
how
we
that
led
wasn't a
with.
huge hit. I don't know how that wasn't a
So
huge hit.
I'll tell you exactly how.
All
We are
right.
not part of the label system. We decided to build this like a rock band. There's a limited amount of funds. There's so much you can do, and you can get out there, but you can't get out there like Jason Aldean can. And you can't
Yeah,
necessarily compete in the same airspace that Carrie Underwood can. But you can get out there and you can bend the needle and you can build your audience and you can have people come. And the great thing is we all have the tools nowadays. So we
yeah,
decided to build it, slow and steady wins the race, not gangbusters and, going to Nashville and showcasing and begging people for a record deal and doing all that stupid stuff that her and I have both been through, which we don't
don't
really
need to do that
believe in that.
anymore.
We don't believe in that system.
Don't
It's
need to
not a
do it
system.
anymore.
It doesn't cultivate the art. It can commercialize and expand upon what you do as an artist, but it doesn't necessarily cultivate the art. And so we wanted to be happy doing our
Yeah.
artist thing. More
Think
importantly,
about this for a second, and this
yeah,
applies to exactly what you're doing. Let's look
yeah,
at this show.
yeah,
I've been living life for the last 30 years. I've been very blessed. I had a nice run in the music business. As my friend
right,
Sam says, you accomplished more than most.
yes,
I didn't have the big hits. I didn't do the big, great things. I started a
yeah,
family. I made a transition in technology. Again,
yeah,
I've been very blessed. I'm living a great
yeah,
life.
yeah,
But I've got 30 years of relationships and people who I've met along the way, and people I've known even longer than that. People I've met just
yeah,
years ago. I've got big access to C-suite people. I've been on the C-suite of a number of companies,
mhm,
and I wanted to I like talking to people. I wanted to
right,
bring other people to the universe. If I
yeah,
wanted to do this that we're doing right now,
yeah,
20 years ago, what would
yeah.
I have had to do? I would have had to have a
You
big
would have
film crew.
you
I would have had to
spent a
have a
lot of
network.
money putting
I
it
would have spent a
together.
lot of
Yeah,
money. Then I would have had to pitch and pitch and
yeah.
pitch and pitch. And
And get
hopefully
knocked
somebody would
down
go,
and people would tell you how to do
oh,
it. No, Vic, I don't like
yeah,
this question. Edit this here,
yeah,
do this there. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
But think about
Exactly.
this for a second. So here I am. I think you'll be episode 17 or 18. So I've been at it
Mhm.
for a bunch of months.
Right.
I do clips all week. I do this once a week, right? I got 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Okay. In three months, I got 1,000
Yeah.
subscribers. I got almost 100,000 views.
Mm-hmm.
This groundswell is happening. The more people I
Yeah.
bring on, their social influence comes into
Right.
it.
Right.
And I'm having a blast, right?
Right.
It also streams on audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else. And I'm part of
Mm-hmm.
what's called Value for Value, and we should take this offline and really talk about
I
this.
know all
But
about it.
so you did,
I know
do you
all
know?
about it.
Well, Adam started that, right? You know about what's
Yeah.
going on in Value for Value? All right. So
Yeah.
it's one of his artists did the very first show, made $7,000 in one night on Value for Value. Just to let you
Wow.
know that. Did a live
Wow.
concert, all promoted on social media, all with
Yep.
other bands, all Value for Value. That
Yeah.
particular artist made $7,000 in one night. They'd made $500 streaming for like the 5 years prior. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but you guys, with the talent you have and the tools that are available to people now and the outreach that's available, you don't need to go do the showcases. And yeah, that's nice. Like if Taylor Swift's label would get behind you and throw millions of dollars at it and she put you on tour opening,
Right.
I get it. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
gateway to stardom, but
Right.
there are ways, and I love the way you're
Yeah.
doing it. I love it.
Well, that is, again, if we didn't have the experiences, Reagan and I, separately, that we
Yeah.
had, we wouldn't feel this way. The only thing
Yeah.
that matters is loving the music and keeping the fuel in the tank to keep writing songs, keep making records, and being able to go perform those songs with great guys from the area. Part of the concept of
Yeah.
Williams Honor and second chances and all this stuff is boasting about where you come from, your music community. We have a revolving door of musicians, many of whom I've played with prior to Williams Honor, that are all part of the band. And for depending on what show we're doing, different guys are in. And it's just always a blast. And it's the gang mentality. I got to tell
It's
you,
great.
because it happened, you know, like some of my favorite country artists have never gotten the chance to play Madison Square Garden. But
I was just about to talk to you about that.
being on stage with your brother standing behind you, knowing you're on the world's most famous stage,
Amazing.
that's a thing, man. That's a real thing. Like, you know, if I'm buried tomorrow, that would be quite a memory at the top of the heap. And
while the eyelashes are flickering.
Exactly. For me and the guys that did it with us, that was quite a moment. And so again, you know, the band thing, now, although we're considered a duo, when we go out and do the shit, it's the gang. It's the gang mentality.
It's the gang.
Trust me, her and I fight as much as anybody else in the world. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. You would believe it because you know exactly how this stuff works. Show me a band that does not fight, and I will show you an unsuccessful band. All of your favorites,
or a band that is no longer.
or right, exactly. Or a band that doesn't make music anymore. So, you know, we are really enjoying doing this, and I have, you know, found myself falling back in love with being in a band and dealing with all the shit that comes along with it, you know?
Well, if it means anything to you, I can tell. I can tell in listening to the songs. I can tell in your social media posts about new events, new songs, new things.
Yeah.
We were texting about scheduling this and your trip to Nashville and all of that. I mean, it pours out of you guys. We were just there for
CMA Fest. That like every year there's, you know, so we hub out of Nashville a lot, obviously, because New Jersey doesn't really have a lot of country music that you would, you know, be going and doing things. So we hub out of Nashville. There's always, again, we were just there for CMA Fest. We go and perform at it every year. There's a lot of things when we do radio tour, we usually hub out of there because a lot of the stations, it's easy to get back to Nashville and then go further south or north or west or whatever. So it's really a second home to us. And we try to make the most out of New Jersey that we can doing what we do. But it's not the easiest thing in the world. So we go where, you know, country is king, and that's Nashville. That's really the home of country music.
I'm anticipating, giving your social following, that a lot of Williams Honors fans, the Army, will probably
Yeah.
be listening to this at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask the question they all want to know.
Yeah.
Are Gordon and Reagan a couple?
Couple of assholes. Yeah. Count on that. You certainly count on that. And the Army would agree with me wholeheartedly.
So I'll take that coy answer as we're not disclosing.
It's we have a tremendous passion to create together.
Yeah.
And that takes precedence. We care about each other tremendously.
Oh, I bet.
And, when you are in any business with someone and it's this, it's worse than being married. You can't get away from the other person. Vic, if you want to get away from your wife, you go call the lawyer. You say, listen, I want a divorce. Get me out of here. Get me papers.
It's not that easy,
I'm going to
buddy.
take the kids and I'm going.
I wouldn't want it. Yeah, I wouldn't want it, but it is not that easy.
Anyway, I can't get out of this. I'm stuck.
I got you.
I'm stuck.
You're worse than a couple is what you're telling me. A couple would be a nice relief.
Yeah. At times.
That's great.
At times, I wish that was the case.
Yeah. Well, I could clearly tell that there's you can't fake a connection on stage.
Yeah.
And there's a deep musical connection there, and it would have to be personal. And I'm sure you guys, have a lot of care for each other and one another. So that's just amazing.
I always think about the Bruce lyric that him and Steven sing together in the same mic. We like the same music. We like the same songs. I mean, it's like that's when we met. That's what it was. And, when we're talking about things that most people in New Jersey wouldn't talk about, musical influences, it really was a tremendous catalyst for inspiring what we could do together. And so sometimes that's as good as any other thing in the whole world, and sometimes it's worse.
Yeah. What's upcoming now for Williams Honor?
So,
what's happening there?
So we just got back from CMA Fest. We are now about to take part in what is kind of the new wave gathering in Asbury Park.
Okay.
Pat Scavino has taken the spirit of wave gathering and he's created something called Asbury Underground.
Okay.
And he has a lot of people from the community helping to put it together. He's got 100 artists playing in all of the businesses on Cookman Avenue, which is now full blown, amazing. If you've walking down the street at all in the last few years, you wouldn't believe it compared to the Asbury Park you grew up in.
Wow.
And it is spectacular. And it's not just like this guy from down the street. I mean, he's got tremendous artists, all playing acoustic, all playing in the businesses, bringing people into town. And we're so proud to be a part of it, again, with many of our friends. There's people that play with us all the time that are doing their own sets. Bobby Mahoney, who is now signed to Little Steven's label, and Emily Grove, and Lou Montesano from Status Green, Val Emick, who was on Sony years ago, was part of our circle. Nicole Atkins is playing. Mark from the Parlor Mob. I can't remember his last name. It's like Melissa or something. Just great artists, fantastically talented artists. And so that spirit continues to live here. The 90s in Asbury Park were an interesting time. A lot of people forgot what it was like when we came up. Our grouping of kids came up. There was 40 of us left here in town, and just a very few venues, and a couple drug dealers and prostitutes, and that was it.
You knew them all by first name.
We did, and everyone left. And I wrote about it during the Sam Hill years. It really felt like people had turned their back on the town, and this was what we inherited. And it was great because we had it all to ourselves, and to see where Asbury Park has grown to, and to see what it has become. And, people like Eileen Chapman and Bob Santelli that have the Springsteen archives and really kind of like the eagle eye of our area. It's just incredible. The Pony is thriving. Madison Marquette came over and redid the boardwalk as we were halfway into wave gathering, and really took the town and made it something great from the boardwalk throughout. We've got a great community here, and so again, this Saturday is this Asbury Underground event that we'll be playing throughout, and along with all of our friends. It's just amazing. And then we go and do the largest country music festival on the East Coast, which is called Barefoot, and it's in Wildwood, New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
There's 4 days.
When's that?
It's June 21st, Friday.
Bummer.
We're on the Keith
Okay.
Urban Day.
Okay.
It starts Thursday, goes through Sunday, and it's like, the headliners are Kane Brown, Keith, name it. There's 50 acts playing. It's incredible. All on the beach. It's really amazing. And last year was our first year doing it. And so we're excited to be part of that again this year. So
do you do that with a band, or you do it as a duo? Yeah, full band?
Who's
in the band for that gig?
Let's see. On that show, we'll have Ron Haney. We will have Kevin Sofera on drums. We'll have Snap, one of our other guitar players, Scott Berdoka. Emily will be singing with us, and Bobby Mahoney will be playing acoustic.
Oh, fantastic.
It's the big band.
That'll be a great gig. Yeah, that's awesome. Any new music coming up? You've been writing, so you got stuff in the can, like, what's happening there?
We do. We always have a foundational grouping of songs that we'll continue to rewrite, and then there's new that goes into that grouping, and then we A-B it and see where our heads are at. This last record was a concept record from start to bottom, and it dealt with, all the things of grief and loss and how to empower oneself, and the record from top to bottom hopefully takes you through those feelings where you can find yourself again.
Nice.
And end with happiness, and joy. But the new stuff we're doing, we are now starting to expand on what Williams Honor is. And country music is so incredibly diverse now. We're at a funny place in the history of country music. There's all kinds of influence. And we feel there's never been a better time for Williams Honor to do what we do best and talk about where we come from. And so there'll be a lot more of that as well in the music this time around.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, Gordon, first of all, I'm still a fan. I'm still a fan and a friend. And whether you know it or not, I'm cheerleading you guys on 24/7, 365. You could tell by the songs I sing that I know the material. Passed along to Little Reags that I'm in love with her voice, and I think she's so talented, and I wish massive success for you guys.
Thank you so much.
Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are the real deal. Super talented. It's coming. It's coming. I know you've got a lot of success under your belt, and now, for the last 75 plus minutes, the rest of the audience knows it as well. But I see even bigger things on the horizon. I really do. I just got a great feeling about it. First and foremost, because of the talent, but secondly, maybe not even first and foremost. Secondly, because of the talent. First and foremost, because I don't think there's anybody more deserving. I really mean it.
I think really what should happen here is you need to start a management company and just take us on, because I'm going to have to put you in my back pocket, because that is what we need.
Let me tell you something. If it were 5 years down the road, I might entertain it. But I got a 5-year mission with my business here, and I would not be doing you any service. But I'm going to make it a point.
Before we go, one very important story. There's so many stories. We'd never be able to get to all of them in this amount of time. But and I know that you know this, but it's important for me to bring it up. When you had your studio in Westfield, I tell people this story all the time. I must have felt a sense of urgency to record 25 songs in 24 hours. And you graciously let me come up with ADAT tapes.
Yep.
And put Dave Halpern in a hallway.
Yep.
And record 25 songs with him.
Yeah, in one day.
Probably was out of my mind trying to get things done. And the process and the craft of recording, for me, and my love for it came from working with people like you. And you were so kind to me through the years, and so supportive and play me that song. I want to hear this. Oh, you could do this. Well, maybe you sing that. But all these things, they all stuck with me. But that event in particular, because you showed me that anything that I thought could be possible.
Wow.
And very few people give other people that chance.
Man,
And so
that's really moving and touching. And I do remember that marathon. I think it might have been 24 hours with no sleep.
it's
Like,
possible.
I don't think we took a break. We pile drive Dave into the ground.
We did. We did.
Which was great. We're like, one more, one more,
Yeah.
one more, one more, one more.
He's like, okay.
Yeah, that was an epic session. It's great.
Yeah.
And I think without a break, I don't remember if it was the next day or that same day, we did good roughs. So you left with good roughs of everything, right?
Now, I'm not going to threaten you, but
Yeah.
I still have all of those tapes, which became what would have been one of our next records. I can't remember which band it was, if it was the second Mr. Reality album, or can't remember which band I was writing songs for at the time. It was probably prior to Sam Hill. Okay. But I have all those tapes, and we're about to start pulling those out. And now with technology, I can do anything, right?
You do whatever you want.
Imagine the possibilities, even still. So anyway,
unreal.
I just wanted to say,
thank you.
That was quite a eye opener for me, because someone like you showed me the way, and
thank you,
it's
man.
empowered my love of producing and record making all through the years.
Love it. Thank you, dude. That means a lot. I'm going to be in Jersey in the summer. I'm going to reach out. Great. I'm going to make sure we connect and say hello, and I'm going to give you a big hug.
Great. If you come to my place, and we'll record 25 drum tracks for you.
I was going to say, you better set up a drum set. I'm coming in for a full night.
I got you ready to go.
Hey, those aren't country tones. That's Mutt Lange stuff. That's not country tones.
We don't even need a drummer anymore.
No, we don't. We need real musicians. Ba-dum-bum.
Exactly.
Brother, have an amazing, amazing night. Thank you so much.
Thank
and we'll
you.
talk again soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning into the show. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the Podcast Index, and Podcasting 2.0. We'd really appreciate if you download Fountain, find us there, and support us via Value for Value. We hope you enjoy the show. Happy listening.